as there is this kind of openness to whatever is happening, less of this sense of there being a sense of, I guess you could say, resistance to what's happening, I just find that there's this almost consistent pain that keeps coming through, like a mix of emotional and physical pain that's just so relentless.
Yeah.
And was just wondering if you can speak to that.
And it's a pain in your torso area?
It can be torso and shoulders, and sometimes headaches and sleeping problems and just exhaustion and all sorts of physical symptoms.
Just give me a moment.
Sure.
It's not coming quickly. Hang on, I just
Yeah,
realized I can
sure.
turn my video on for you.
Oh, yeah.
What would be the best outcome of me, of what I could say about it?
That's a good question. Um, I guess it's just how can I find peace with this pain, with the experience of pain, and I'm looking for some, I guess, guidance or some words that might help me be at peace with it, because I'm completely clueless for,
Yeah,
or I know that it's just pointless to try to get rid of it or to try to solve the pain, and I'm just struggling to make peace with it.
yeah.
Or I don't know, is that even maybe too much to try to do, to try to make peace with it? Like, is that too much of a doing, you could say?
Um, that's um, it's just about to come out. Sorry. Sometimes
Sure, sure.
I don't, sometimes my just takes. It's like it can be felt like the words are just just coming.
Oh, okay.
On the level of you becoming at peace with it, there's many things that you, the illusory you, could do in order to make things better. Um, none of them can be guaranteed because the nature of life is to always move and to not know the outcome. But there's many things the person could do to make itself feel better. Just like building a house, there's good ways in which to build a house. It's the same with the body mind mechanism robot of the human. There's ways in which more pleasure and more pleasurable sensations can be an outcome. So if you say eat unhealthily, it's more than likely going to create a less happy instrument. But then if this has anything to do with non-duality, but this is just talking on a personal level for the person. So if you eat healthily, then most probably that will make more pleasurable chemicals, and it will make all your organs and everything run smoother. There's Chinese medicine and acupuncture that will help on the nervous system and help relax everything. There's massage. There's drugs that you can get to the doctor, but that's my least favorite out of all of them. There's many things. Creativity, music, art helps produce more pleasure in the body and more relaxation, less work, less stress, less living in a city, countryside, nature, animals.
It's interesting to hear you say all that, because it's sort of like in some ways I've almost tried to ignore all of those solutions, because I guess what I was thinking was that's just more of the ego, you could say, trying to reach for pleasure as opposed to awakening to, that the me that is not affected by the kind of comings and goings of pleasure and pain.
Yeah, that's a misinterpretation of non-duality. Sorry.
Huh. No, that's great. I'm really glad to hear that. That's really helpful.
Then it's not the person that wakes up. It's not the filter that actually wakes up, but most speakers speak as if it's the filter that wakes up, and the filter's got to be a certain way in order for the light to fully shine through it, or for the light to wake up again, or for aliveness or beingness to wake up again. And so a lot of the time when they hear the description of non-duality, or they hear non-duality, either the speaker or the one that's listening interprets it as something it's got to do, enlightenment or waking up as a personal thing. And it often becomes very unhappy while doing this, because it ignores the human. It's like me asking my dog not to be a dog, and of course it's going to become unhappy. If I put my dog just in a tiny little box and I expected it to not want to run and hunt and to eat flesh, then it's going to become a very painful body for that dog. It's going to be a very painful body. Like the dog's going to be in a lot of pain. Because the dog's going to be wanting to run. It can't know it because the dog doesn't have an intelligence like a human. So we often get into, like, I don't know who or what you've been listening to, we get into this idea of believing it's us that wake up, and then the illusion of self separates into two, and then the illusion of self looks at itself from another illusion and judges its own enlightenment, and then tries to make it enlightenment by doing certain practices and certain things or certain ideas, like even non-duality ideas. So if it feels angry with its girlfriend, rather than expressing its anger, it starts repeating the story, there is nobody, there's nobody here, there's nobody at home, there's nobody there. It tries to not be a human anymore, and it becomes a very unhappy human. And it's not just you, Carl, like this is what happened with the Lisa story. It's what happens with most people when they begin to hear this message, partly because a lot of non-duality speakers mix the two, and they tell you it's a personal enlightenment, and partly because it's the nature of what the person will do. It will try and embody what it wants, so it will try and embody enlightenment, so it will try not to be a person, it will try to be the absolute. Then you get speakers like Jeff Foster, or other speakers that go through that, and then they start to abandon the absolute and tell you how you've got to be fully human, because that trap happens so many times, and it's not then they tell you they like all everything that everybody speaks has its pros and its cons, and when a person hears this message, it's always going to be interpreted as personal. So even if they hear Jeff Foster start saying, oh no, you've got to be fully human, then the person will still develop this spiritual ego and try to be fully human. It will still try to be something, and it can't help it. It's what it does. But it does make itself very unhappy in the process of it, because it tries to be something. And rather than it trying to be successful and trying to be have lots of money, which in a way is a more natural thing than trying to be enlightened. So rather than it trying to get money and be a successful person in society, it's then trying to be enlightened. And actually, trying to be enlightened is more neurotic than seeking for money. It's worse.
Yes.
It's the worst thing. Like Ramesh used to say, if you get offered enlightenment, or if you're going for enlightenment on money, go for money. Because enlightenment, at least like money's like a thing, although money's fake and it's not really real, it's the way that our society works in order to survive, and survive luxuriously. But it's what we're naturally programmed to do. We're naturally programmed to hunt and to survive. But we're not naturally programmed to be enlightened. The human's programmed to be a human. That's got nothing to do with the human enlightenment. It's got nothing to do with the human world. So the human then interprets enlightenment as it interprets hunting for money, as it interprets hunting for a lover or hunting for a house. And then it tries to emulate that with enlightenment. And the worst thing about enlightenment is enlightenment's not like money or a house. You can never get it. At least with a house or money, you can, I know it's not ultimately real, but you can kind of get it. You can kind of buy yourself a house or get money. Enlightenment doesn't exist in the human world. The human can't get enlightened. It can never get there. It's like it pedals on a hamster wheel. And the more it looks, in a way, for enlightenment, the more unhappy it becomes, because it's something that is totally non-reachable. It's really full on. You might it really pops a lot of bubbles, because this also really scares the person, because the person, as it's associated it with money and survival, like the only thing it can do, is when it hears this, it really threatens it, because it thinks, but if I don't go for this, what have I got to do? What's my purpose in life? The human's purpose in life is to survive, and it's got totally confused by this idea of enlightenment. The human's purpose in life is to move towards pleasure. And I'm not talking about a hedonistic lifestyle. I mean, in a way, there is only a hedonistic lifestyle, because whatever the person does, even if it seeks for enlightenment, it's moving towards pleasure. But that's not exactly what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about drugs and drink, but I'm just trying to point out that it's not the person in any way that gets enlightened. But while we've been talking, Carl, the person feels that it is the one that heard Lisa. And it even might be the one that's looking at Lisa. But actually, total freedom hears Lisa. Total freedom sees Lisa. And it's not even something that hears or sees Lisa that's separate from Lisa. It's all one thing, actually. The hearing and the seeing of Lisa is one and the same thing. The looking... no, sorry. I just got confused because I lost your pager. So the looking at Lisa and the seeing of Lisa is one thing. The hearing and the hearing and the heard of Lisa is one and the same thing. They're all. It's like right now, this is total freedom experiencing itself, but only in this instant. It's got nothing to do with a person getting to enlightenment or a person trying to fix its pain. It's only in the instant. This sound of Lisa's voice is total freedom. This sight of Lisa is total freedom. And that's actually the experiencer. What's happening is the experiencer. And it's always free. It's everything and nothing. And it's happening and not happening. It's in movement and perfectly still. The illusion of self believes that it's something moving in time that will get to enlightenment. And it tries to become enlightened, and it tries to take on enlightened qualities. So the illusion of self tries to not have desire, tries to not have pleasure, tries to not move towards things. But that illusion of self, that character which is claimed to be the center of the world, is designed to move towards things. But what happens is not the end of the character, it's the end of that one that's claiming it to be someone, rather than an impersonal functioning happening. So you know that person that says that it can see the pain and it can see itself, its awakening, that too is an appearance happening in this, and in no way talks about enlightenment. As soon as it goes in time, it can't talk about enlightenment. So the person that says, oh, I'm more happy, or I'm more free now, or I'm less free now, or I'm more contracted, I'm less at peace with something now, is an appearance happening. And that appearance can never find freedom, can never look for freedom, because that appearance is simply an appearance happening now. And the freedom is everything. The freedom is it happening, not where it thinks it's going.
What comes to mind is this sense of, after so much inquiry, after so much of this questioning of everything, I don't even know how to be human anymore.
Yeah.
And yet, as you're just saying, though, that's yet just an appearance right now.
And even that one that doesn't know how to be human is an appearance in this, and the freedom actually is it all happening, and it's the end of that energy sticking to that as being an experiencer. That one that says, I don't know how to be human anymore. It's like all of that can play on, but that's no longer the experiencer of life. That is an experience happening in life. It's more than likely, though, the questions about enlightenment and not enlightenment will begin to fall away. But the human is a very simple instrument. It works like any other animal. It's amazing how this becomes so abstract in the human. It moves towards pleasure. And what it finds pleasurable is eating, sex, and shelter, like warmth. It's very simple. And competing with its with other humans. That's not an ego thing, competing. It's very natural. Dogs do it. All other animals do it. It enjoys competing. It enjoys having competition. But none of it's really real, and it's not going to make you more valid by being the one that wins the race. And creativity. The human has a brilliant mind and can create. But its creation is always about survival. So its plays, its films, its art is always about moving towards pleasure, even though it doesn't realize it. So like in films and in TV, what we love about it is watching how the person deals with problems. So in every, I don't know if you know how TV or films are set up. I sound like I know so much, but originally my career was in playwriting. So the way that films are set up is, or a TV show, if you have a TV show, in like a 40-minute TV show, you'll have 4 arcs. And what an arc is where a challenging situation is presented. And what we're interested in as viewers is seeing how that person deals with it. And this is how we keep and stay interested in TV. We think it's about challenging our ideas, but improving our survival chances by doing it. Just like my dog loves watching the birds and the ducks on the lake. We live on the lake, because the movement and the urge is so much about killing. She can sit and watch the movement of these animals endlessly. It's a great pleasure. It's the same with us and television. We love watching how people deal with difficult situations, because it helps our imagination grow. We love storytelling for this fact, because our whole society is based on storytelling. So these are all things that we enjoy, and it's a very simple formula to be happy. It's not complicated. We think it's very existential, being happy, that we need all these things, but it's not that we need all these things. What happiness in the human world is simply the ability to move towards pleasure. That's all the human wants. It just enjoys that movement towards pleasure. It doesn't even need to be the top provider or the top getter. It just enjoys being creative and moving towards it. But when people are on the enlightenment path and the enlightenment story, they try to not move towards any more pleasures and they become incredibly depressed. It's like putting a dog in a box for its whole life and saying it just gets fed and it can't do anything.
Yeah.
So that's all the humans set up to do. And it's not set up as a really nasty animal. It will step on other people to get more pleasure. But it's not really nastily. It's also empathetic. It's quite a nice animal. We do bad things when we don't see it, but that's because we can't imagine bad things happening to, like, all of our clothes. Most of the people listening are in Western worlds most probably, and all our clothes are most probably sweatshop clothes. And it's not that we're nasty that we do that, but because we don't see it, we can't relate to it and we can't produce the imagination of how bad that is. But if we saw somebody working in a sweatshop and we actually went and visited, we wouldn't be able to do it. We're not nasty, we just can't imagine what's not in front of us very well. Like things like that, we can't imagine empathy very well. A little bit, but not enough to stop us doing it. So we go to our supermarket and we buy food that's from animals that are very badly abused, but if we actually saw the animal being abused in front of us, we wouldn't eat it. 90% of us or 95% of us wouldn't eat it. We have a niceness about us, although we are predators as well. We do kill.
So it may sound like just a ridiculous question, but there's just this sitting with like, I just have no clue what to do anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, hearing that response or hearing what you shared, I really enjoy it. It resonates as there's something that feels so true about it.
Yeah.
And yet there's just a sense of I must have completely missed it somehow in this whole
No, well, in one way, but also there is going to be the identification of a person has got a weight to it. Like, I mean, that's not deniable. When you believe that you are a limitation, it always does feel slightly caged. So it's always going to be caged, the person. But basically, in that cage, what the person wants to do is be creative, and it wants to be creative about moving towards pleasure.
But isn't that in some ways, I guess I've been so conditioned in my spiritual search that I think of that as almost just like a distraction.
No, that's really beautiful. Would you want the flower would you imagine, this is where I get annoyed with other speakers, because imagine saying to a bird, if you want to become enlightened, you must stop flying. Imagine saying to a flower, if you want to become enlightened, you must stop growing towards the sun. It's like a cruelty. And then what they also say is that that's your ego resisting, and the reason you're in so much pain is because your ego is in resistance.
Yeah.
And so you're trapped to this group because you always feel like it's your ego which is reacting. But I'm not denying the fact that the illusion of self is a cage in itself. And that does become very weighty for people, and it becomes hard to manage because it is going to always feel tight, because it's a lie. There's not somebody actually experiencing life. But that person cannot take on non-duality. There is nothing it can do which will make that person closer to non-duality. So all this spiritual stuff about trying not to crave for pleasure or go towards pleasure, in one way, there is truth in it, because when you feel that you're a separate self, pleasure seeking is taken to the extreme, and the person believes that the next pleasure will satisfy me forever. And that's not true. Pleasure is pleasure, it comes and goes. That's what the human does. Its occupation is to move towards pleasure, but you're never going to find God in a pleasure. You're never going to get to a pleasure and be like, oh, this is it. But that's how the human's set up, is to think the separate self believes that it will. So in that way, like it says, you've got to stop craving, or they say you've got to stop seeking for pleasure. And it's not seeking for pleasure, it's that one that believes it will find God in the next pleasure. But that one that feels like that cannot stop by its own effort. It will stop when you, as existence, decide to stop playing that game. You can't sit under a tree and force it. You can't stop seeking for pleasure and make it happen. You'll make the body-mind mechanism more depressed.
It's such a tempting myth, isn't it, that I can make it happen.
Because that's what it's like. But in a practical sense, that's how it works with the human. The human imagines something. It imagines how to build a house. It imagines, okay, I'm here, the bricks are there, I put them on top of each other and I build a house. And that works practically. Like with my dog, if she gets her ball trapped under the worktop, I can lift up the worktop to get the ball, whereas she would just sit there for hours trying to get it out. So we have these brilliant imaginations, but what that person does, and this is the bit where it gets really depressed, is it imagines enlightenment as a thing, and then it imagines that it can move towards it. But enlightenment isn't actually something you can move towards at all. At least with building a table or a house or walking the dog, there can be a movement towards that. But you can't move towards enlightenment. Enlightenment is. And life will stop playing this illusion of separate self when it stops playing it.
Oh, that's brilliant.
It is really brilliant, and everything is totally free, even when it feels like it's not. It is really, really beautiful. It's just that existence wants to have the experience of a separate person at the moment, of a separate person looking for enlightenment. And that's who's truly listening now and truly looking. It's not something far away from you. It is existence. It is what is. That's what is playing. And there's very simple ways in which to make the person happier. My boyfriend talks about it in Dutch. He just talks about the simple programming of the human being, or what the human being likes is creativity. It likes being social as well. It's a social animal. Obviously, having a stable environment. What's it called? Like a stable a home, like stable security, stable home, I suppose. And it likes obviously being fed well. Like a lot of us eat loads of junk food, which makes us really tired all the time, or makes people really tired all the time. So sugar's really, like sugar, all these sort of things aren't the best way to go. But that's just on the human world. And then girlfriends or boyfriends, whichever way. Those sort of things. And not all bodies are the same. It varies in each one. But we're not that complicated. We're animals just like dogs and cats and...
Wow. Thank you, Lisa. This
My
is
pleasure,
really
Carl.
helpful. I really appreciate it.
Nice. Thanks, Carl.
Thanks. Take care.
Bye.